Abraham's sacrifice, often referred to as the binding of Isaac or the Akedah, is a pivotal narrative in religious traditions, particularly within Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This story, found in the book of Genesis, depicts God commanding Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, only to intervene at the last moment, providing a ram as a substitute. This event serves as a profound test of faith and obedience, symbolizing unwavering trust in divine will. The significance of Abraham's sacrifice lies in its foundational role in illustrating the virtues of faith and obedience, central tenets in Abrahamic religions. For believers, Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son, even when faced with a heart-wrenching demand, epitomizes the ultimate submission to God's will. It underscores the idea that faith may require profound personal sacrifice, and that true devotion is often tested through monumental challenges. One real-world example of the influence of this narrative is the celebration of Eid al-Adha in Islam. During this festival, Muslims commemorate Abraham's readiness to sacrifice his son by ritually sacrificing an animal, typically a sheep or goat, to honor God's provision of a substitute. This act reinforces themes of obedience and sacrifice, fostering a sense of community and charity as the meat is distributed to the needy. Another example is the Jewish liturgical reading of the Akedah during Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. This recounting serves as an introspective reminder of faith and devotion at the start of the year, encouraging believers to renew their spiritual commitments. The story of Abraham's sacrifice is not without controversy. Critics question the morality of a test that demands such extreme loyalty, arguing it portrays a troubling aspect of divine-human relationships. The story raises ethical dilemmas about the nature of faith and the limits of obedience, prompting debates about whether such devotion could lead to fanaticism or blind faith. Some interpretations propose alternative readings that focus on the metaphorical or allegorical meanings of the text, rather than a literal understanding. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac influences broader discussions around trust in divine guidance and the role of tests or trials in spiritual maturation. It provides a framework for exploring how personal faith can be both deeply personal and universally resonant, shaping individual beliefs and collective religious identity. This narrative acts as a cornerstone for understanding the intricate dance between divine command and human agency, enriching the broader discourse on moral and spiritual obedience. The command from God, origins and significance, refers to the biblical account in which God commands Abraham to sacrifice his son, Isaac. This story, found in Genesis 22, serves as a pivotal moment in the narrative of Abraham's life, representing a profound test of faith and obedience. The command's origins lie in God's covenant with Abraham, where he promised to make Abraham the father of a great nation through Isaac. Despite this promise, God instructs Abraham to offer Isaac as a burnt offering, a request that appears to contradict God's previous assurances. In relation to Abraham's sacrifice, this command underscores the intensity of faith required to trust in divine plans that seem inexplicable or contrary to human understanding. It highlights the notion of ultimate obedience, where Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his beloved son exemplifies total submission to God's will. This act of faith and obedience is central to understanding the narrative's broader implications on religious devotion and trust in divine wisdom. A real-world application of this concept can be seen in the practices of individuals or communities that prioritize faith over rationality, believing that divine guidance supersedes human logic. For example, religious adherents might follow spiritual tenets or undergo significant personal sacrifices based on their unwavering faith in divine instructions. Another example is the broader cultural or spiritual emphasis on trusting long-term plans or outcomes that may initially appear daunting or adverse, much like Abraham's situation. Opinions supporting this concept often emphasize the virtues of unconditional faith and the personal growth that comes from overcoming spiritual trials. Many religious scholars view Abraham's unwavering obedience as a testament to the power of faith to transcend earthly concerns. However, this command is not without controversy. Critics argue it presents ethical dilemmas, questioning the morality of a deity that would demand such a sacrifice. Alternative viewpoints suggest interpreting the story allegorically, focusing on its symbolic significance rather than literal historicity, to address moral concerns. This command is intertwined with other aspects of Abraham's narrative, influencing themes of divine promise, covenant, and the foreshadowing of redemption. Abraham's test ultimately results in his deeper understanding of God's providence, reinforcing his role as a patriarch and model of faith. This episode serves not only as a turning point in Abraham's life, but also shapes the foundational ethos of trust and obedience in the religious traditions that revere this story. Abraham's journey toward the sacrifice is a pivotal narrative within the broader story of his faith and obedience to God. This journey, which culminates in the offering of his son Isaac, is a profound testament to the depth of Abraham's faith and his willingness to adhere to divine command, no matter the personal cost. It embodies a series of steps marked by trust, preparation, and unwavering commitment to God's will, despite the emotional turmoil and moral dilemma involved. The significance of this point in the narrative of Abraham's sacrifice lies in its illustrative demonstration of faith in action. Abraham's journey is not just a physical path to Mount Moriah, but also a spiritual odyssey that highlights his steadfast belief in God's promises. This journey marks a fundamental moment of testing and proves Abraham's unwavering loyalty and trust in God's plans, which holds great importance in theology, symbolizing the ultimate expression of faith and obedience. To illustrate, consider the specific moments where Abraham, when instructed by God, immediately sets out with Isaac and his servants without hesitation. This immediate compliance reflects his devotion and trust in God's wisdom beyond his understanding. Additionally, another example is Abraham's deliberate preparation for the sacrifice, where he carries the wood, places it upon Isaac, and proceeds with the ritual up to the point of drawing the knife. These actions underscore Abraham's resolve and faith, emphasizing faith as a principle of action. Opinions supporting this interpretation often cite Abraham as a paragon of unwavering faith, whose actions serve as a model for believers. Many view this narrative as an embodiment of complete reliance on divine guidance, where true faith is tested and proven through action, not merely belief. However, Abraham's journey is not without its controversies and alternative viewpoints. Some argue that the ethical implications of child sacrifice, even as a test of faith, are problematic and raise questions about the nature of divine tests. Others suggest that the narrative might be symbolic rather than historical, proposing it as an allegory for spiritual obedience rather than a literal event. This concept of Abraham's journey is deeply interconnected with the larger themes of divine testing, obedience, and faith encapsulated in the story. It influences our understanding of what it means to be obedient to divine will and how true faith might require profound personal sacrifice. By examining Abraham's journey, we gain insight into the complexities and demands of faith as a relational dynamic between humanity and the divine. The concept of faith and obedience in Abraham's decision is central to understanding the biblical narrative of Abraham's sacrifice. Faith, in this context, is a profound trust in God's promises despite uncertainties, while obedience signifies the act of following divine commands, even when they challenge personal understanding or desires. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son Isaac, as recounted in the book of Genesis, epitomizes these principles. This narrative examines not only Abraham's personal journey of faith and obedience, but also sets a foundational example of these virtues for subsequent generations in Judeo-Christian traditions. The significance of faith and obedience in this context lies in their intertwined nature as expressions of trust in divine will. Abraham's decision is pivotal because it demonstrates that faith is not passive. It requires active obedience, even when the divine command seems incomprehensible. The story is a testament to the depth of Abraham's trust in God, believing that God would ensure a righteous outcome. This act of obedience is considered a critical test, illustrating to believers the ultimate submission of personal understanding to divine wisdom. Real-world applications of this concept are plentiful. Consider a medical professional who, driven by faith, provides care in underserved areas despite personal risk. Their obedience to a higher call to serve mirrors Abraham's readiness to fulfill a divine command. Another example might be seen in the lives of social justice advocates who, compelled by a deep-seated belief in equality and righteousness, pursue systemic change in the face of opposition. These scenarios reflect how faith motivates individuals to act beyond immediate personal benefit, embodying a higher moral conviction. Support for the importance of faith and obedience often comes from religious and ethical circles, which view these virtues as foundational to a life of integrity and purpose. However, challenges and controversies arise, particularly when obedience leads to actions that appear morally or ethically questionable, as seen in various religious extremisms. Critics argue that blind obedience can sometimes lead to harmful outcomes, highlighting the need for a balance between faith-driven obedience and rational ethical considerations. The concept of faith and obedience in Abraham's narrative influences broader theological discussions about the nature of sacrifice, divine testing, and moral responsibility. It provokes reflection on how individuals reconcile personal beliefs with divine or moral imperatives. Ultimately, this point not only defines Abraham's legacy, but also serves as a lens through which believers examine their own lives, wrestling with the complexities of faith and the challenges of true obedience.